Oh my goodness. Well, I was actually born and raised here in Cincinnati. I went to elementary school, high school, first year of college, and then I actually ended up relocating to Oceanside, California for about 7 or 8 years. I was out there, which I think did me great because I completed my education. I began a lot of my community-based work, like volunteering, writing Black history plays, and I don't think you realize I used to write little skits and plays.
No, I didn't know that.
And doing art exhibits and this, community empowerment. And then once I had my first child, we returned back to Cincinnati. I mean, the pace was very fast out in California. It's like,
Yeah.
woo. But I think it made me a more well-rounded person. So I came back to Cincinnati hitting the ground running. And actually, whoo, man, I guess I'm kind of showing my age. I'm not really old, but I'm not like a baby either. But I have been at this professionally, wow, over 40 years. So, but I've been an artist since I was like 3 years old, that I can remember, because I was kind of drawing and painting in our family's encyclopedia set. I love to share that story. I do a lot of conferences and workshops that empower women and young people, and just really getting people to pull within themselves and pull out the greatness. I've had a really great opportunity to do a lot of international work as well. Most of my international work started, of course, when I was in the Air Force Reserves, but as a professional as a fine artist, it started back in 2011, where I actually started traveling to the continent of Africa, mainly different countries in Africa, and using art to share our history and culture. So, man, I don't know where to stop. I'm gonna stop there for now. And if we find another place to fuse some other little tidbits, I'll slide it in.
Wonderful. And can you tell us about the On Her Shoulders project, your role inside of the project and your vision for these beautiful pieces that you created that we'll get to see and like talk about in a minute here?
Yeah, this is an exciting project because it actually had two levels. The city of Cincinnati teamed up with Artswave, Duke Energy, Fifth Third Bank, and the Greater Cincinnati Foundation to create this project called Truth and Reconciliation. And so, because I'm a veteran artist in the city, there was a level of an artist commission where they all were grants, but the people who have been doing it for a while, like me and Kathy Wade and some other folks, they actually called ours an artist commission because they were honoring the legacy of our work in the city. But what it does is I'm aligning my project with the main goal of creating dialogue around race and around healing and around using the art as a teaching tool so that we can learn about each other more and begin to build bridges. That kind of falls in line to what I do anyway. So I say it is several months of me just doing Annie Ruth. What I decided to do was look at the perspective of how can I best share the perspective of a Black woman. So I've entrenched myself into many of the experiences that's been happening during COVID, during the racial tension that's been happening in our country, and even my role as a Black woman in Cincinnati, using the art to spearhead conversation. And even though we might, butt heads on some of the topics, I think visual art and just the arts itself is the most non-threatening way to tackle some of the hard stuff. So after viewing this exhibit, I think it should give people a very vivid picture of, how Black women think and communicate and process. Yeah.
I really love how you just illustrated art making and visual art as a bridge between people and between really difficult conversations, a way of like creating an opening where maybe there wasn't one before, and bringing like, sometimes for difficult conversations, we need just enough safety to start the conversation, to feel like we can dive and go in there. So bringing beauty into the conversation as a potential gateway.
And it's showing different perspectives, because I was talking with Sharon Draper and another friend the other evening, and they said what they like most about my work is that they can look at it one moment, come back, leave, come back, and see something totally different than, like, oh, you know, so a lot of times the art is going to capture you where you are. So if I'm at a particular place where I've only been exposed to it and experienced so much in life, I'll see one thing. But if I leave, come back, and look at it again, I'll see another. And I always tell people it's not about right or wrong or better or worse. It's just about having this expanded viewpoint of what the art can do. And I think that's where the conversations come in at.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. So why don't we dive in? We can
Hey, yeah, let's do this.
All right, cool. I'm going to share the screen and we'll start to take a look at what you've created for the On Her Shoulders project. So this is the first piece.
Yes, this piece is the very first piece that I created. It's called I Call Upon the Elders. And, you know, I'm just going to hit you with a question. And remember, when looking at my artwork, there is no right or wrong answer. So just kind of holler out. What's something you see in that painting?
No, I see community as a ring of hair and halos. So all of these people together, and it makes me wonder about lineage, ancestry, community, the future. I kind of get this past present sense when I see all of those shapes of people surrounding her head.
Oh, wow. You know what? Amazingly enough, you hit it right on the head in terms of where I was coming from. You know, I definitely wanted to depict a very strong Black woman. So her features are very, there's no question about it that she is a Black woman. Her lips are broad and her nose are broad intentionally. Her eyes are actually, they're closed, but they're kind of in the shape of cowrie shells. And cowrie shells were actually used in Western African culture as a currency and wealth. So instead of exchanging dollar bills or gold or whatever, they would exchange cowrie shells for, you know, whether you're at the market or, you know, you're doing trade. The other thing I loved about this piece was every single elder or ancestor around her head or halo has on a different print. Can you imagine me sorting through my fabric bin?
Oh my goodness.
And their heads are actually made out of seashells.
Okay.
So
yeah.
Yeah. So just really showing that as a Black woman, I don't walk this journey alone. If I'm going through a boardroom or a classroom or a gallery, I have a whole host of angels or ancestors or sisters behind me. So that halo or that the people around her head represents her village. That when you see me, so let's make it Annie the Black sister. When you see me, it's not just me. I'm bringing myself. I'm bringing my mother and my grandmother and all the different elders and ancestors who have had a positive impact on me and who have poured into me. So that's one of my favorites too.
What is she holding? So I noticed that her hands are in this like prayer.
Yeah, her hands are they're kind of cupped in prayer, and then they're actually seashells. They're pink seashells that kind of give you the semblance of a pink rose. And that pink rose in there is representing with the wisdom of the elders or experience. There's also a pearl. There's a pearl in the middle of that pink rose that talks about how we cherish the wisdom of the elders. But so I'm glad you noticed that too. And then her hands are actually meant to where the way they're cupped, they kind of make you feel like it could be a container. So I didn't want her fingers to necessarily look like, okay, these are her fingers that are cupped. I wanted to kind of feel like a container that was holding holding that rose.
I noticed her hands also look quite a bit like seashells.
Mm-hmm.
There's like that.
Oh yeah, that's true. You know, the other thing too about just how that pearl, how that pearl is developed in the middle of that shell. So I kind of you
Wow,
see
that's
a
lovely.
lot of throughout all of my work. It'll be infused with lots of symbolism and color. And here the yellows will represent spirit. So the embodiment of the spirit of who she is.
Let's talk a little bit more about that pearl. That really catches my ears and my attention in a certain way. This like how it is that a pearl is formed. How is the pearl a metaphor for the Black woman experience?
Oh my goodness, just because Black women as a whole, and particularly in this country, it wasn't until recently that we were even able to really even trace our ancestral roots. So you look back through some of the hardships and experiences that have pressed against us. It didn't destroy us. For those of us who have been pressed down, pressed against, you know, it doesn't destroy us, but it actually helps to bring out the essence of who we are. So even in that pearl inside that shell, I mean, can you imagine in the deepest of oceans, locked away in the shell through the pressures and calcification of time, here comes this beautiful pearl out of the middle of all of that adversity and press. So it's a reminder too that the wisdom that we possess is a rare gem, and it's meant to be shared too.
Absolutely. And there also seems like a really nice ancestral, like the ocean elements of this piece too, the shells, the ancestry, the like length of process, like creating a pearl is something that takes quite a long time.
It does. And the other thing too, if I'm not sure if you've ever read in scriptures, oftentimes when you talk about the sea and the ocean, they'll represent sometimes the storms of life. So so when you're looking at my art, you get all of those kind of messages that are infused in there. And then I'll be honest with you, I can't take total credit for everything, because sometimes there's some subliminal messages infused in there just because I'm letting the art take me on this journey of revealing itself. So sometimes I see elements after I have intentionally, you know, done something in the work.
I also really love how serene she is. She's so collected and calm and confident and prayerful. Like I feel her sending love forward and back. And
Yeah.
that
I was actually, I don't know if I told you this or not. I was actually working on this piece during the time I was caring for my mother before she passed away. So in my home, I would be painting in the living room, and my sister and mom might be sitting in the I was painting in the dining room, and they might be in the living room just kind of watching me just do what I do.
wow.
Mom just enjoyed the fact, because she loved all the different fabrics too. She used to sew quilts. So instead of her picking out all these fabrics for artwork, she would have been picking them out to make a beautiful quilt. So I had a friend who said she saw this as a very fitting tribute to my mom.
Wow, that's gorgeous. I love that story.
Thank you.
I can see that showing up. And I like the evolution too. It's not that the people around the halo there, it's not traditionally quilted. Like there's this evolution of the artwork that seems to happen generation to generation too. Like we get the stories and we get the skills from the generation before us, and then we transmute them, like they shift a little bit.
Yes, they do. We take at least with my mom, because she taught me everything I know about gardening and crafts and definitely cleaning a house. there's an art form even in cleaning the house. So I'm taking cleaning the house to a whole new level too.
Oh, beautiful. All right. So this is another piece that you created as a part of the On Her Shoulders project.
Yes. Can you tell I had fun with this one? I was thinking about
this sense of joy about it.
It is, and just it's called triune. Is representative of the three parts of myself as an individual: spirit, body, and soul. And you notice that as they overlap each other, the sharing of the eyes. I love to, usually for me, if I'm doing closed eyes on a piece, it's typically indicating deep thought or prayer. So you might not be able to tell far away, but those are actually on the outside of them. They're layered with Bible scriptures. So I actually took an old Bible that I had and tore the pieces throughout and circled them around. I got probably about 6 or 7 different fabric prints from West Africa that are floating through the artwork. There are some kente prints. The kente prints have the nice geometric. So where you see the nice geometric type shapes over towards where like the light blue is, that's kind of like the kente prints were for each particular African nation or tribe. Each king had a specific design that would identify his tribe or kingdom. So I had fun with it. It didn't really go too deep on it other than just triune, meaning I'm three-part individual. And so trying to make sure I nurture all 3 of those parts of myself.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what that's like for you as an artist and individual to nurture all the parts of yourself?
You know what? For me, I have to have a balance between spirit and soul. Now, and some people might look at it as religious, but for me, if it doesn't set right in terms of my spiritual beliefs, if it's not edifying and not uplifting to where I don't sit here and take the glory, like give example, I don't sit here and take the glory for being this awesome artist. I feel like I'm this vessel that God has poured into. So I always like to honor, when I say spirit, I like to honor the Holy Spirit within myself. I also like to keep a balance on the physical, my mind, my will, and my emotions. So that's what I call my soul, my mind, my will, and my emotions, keeping those balanced. And I'll be honest with you, I can tell if something's off balance with me, you won't get my best art. You just won't. I'm working on the balance in the body part now.
Oh, nice. Yes. Yeah, and I saw some pictures of your gardening and this connection that you have to planting and growing food and eating healthy, and this just sort of like multi-layered, which is what I see in this painting. I see all these layers of whole, what I would call wholing, bringing the whole self together.
Yeah.
Really gorgeous. And I love how vibrant each of them, the intersections between the faces really catch my attention.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I did one very similar to this in the theme of the intersections, but not this particular color palette. I think they had a show called Black and Brown Faces at the Art Museum. And I did a piece called, I forget the name of it, but it intersected like that. But it was talking about viewing, because during that time, my mom had actually passed away. So I did that piece when she had actually passed away as well. And so it actually took a more ancestral viewpoint from the intersections.
So there's this also component of art making being a way of processing legacy and processing grief at the same time.
All of it at the same time. For me, lots of legacy in there and lots of processing. You're right, processing my grief. Nothing can really prepare you for the passing of a parent, particularly a mom. And I think if I did not have my art to kind of pour what I was feeling and thinking into, I think it would have left me very unbalanced. So I'm thankful for that, that I've got this, you know, so I've been writing and I've been painting too, so.
So that brings us to the third piece for our conversation.
Oh yeah, you ready to dive deep? This is a deep
Let's
one.
go. Yeah.
This one right here is called "Your Silence is Deafening." And, you know, it deals with, during the time that we were seeing the, and I know the George Floyd trial against the police officer, the murder trial is occurring now. This happened, I created this piece during that time, but it's not just an indictment to, you know, my Caucasian brothers and sisters. It's a call to say that silence in any case can be deafening, meaning that sometimes not saying anything is not the best course of action. And in this case, the person is indicating that the silence is so loud that it's painful. So there's lots of symbolism throughout there. So I like to just kind of throw it back to you in terms of you know, what you see, what kind of elements you see depicted in this piece.
Yeah, sure. I'm seeing a lot. I think one is the pain and the what you said about like it's so deafening that it hurts. So there's this real like communication, a story of pain and anguish, the character that is in the center of the piece. And I see the tears coming from their eyes. I also noticed what I think are chains.
Yeah.
The wrists. And then I wonder, I'm like real curious about the lines that are connecting above their eyes to the person on the top in this, like, what does that mean?
That is actually, that's a nice abstract way to lead you into, so the person, they actually are steps, but they're also hands too. So they're hands and steps. So wow. They're kind of holding, so the top person's kind of holding their face like this, like, oh my. And then there's that big black X across her mouth. It's like, I leave it to the viewer to determine what is that X. Has her mouth, is her silence because the silence is forced upon her? Has she chosen to be silent? You know what I mean? It's like, it leaves it open, because a lot of times, like, give example, I had, I think when I was watching the George Floyd murder on the television, it was so painful. It was mentally draining. Some people would say something, but then there were other populations where you didn't hear a word. So it left you wondering, like, why are you quiet? What does your silence mean? Are you scared to speak up? Is someone telling you not to speak up? You know what I mean? So it leaves lots of questions, but whether you're scared to speak up, whether someone's telling you not to speak up, the action or the reaction is still painful to those around you who are, you know, receiving, you know, the results of your action. It's almost, so take that same case, that was in one case with racial tension. Take that same case if someone was being abused and someone was silent about it. So it's like your silence would say so much. Your silence might say, I consent to this. And so there you've got the pain coming. When I put the chains on there, it's a reminder that the majority of African Americans that are on this continent didn't get here because we were immigrants. A couple of years ago, there was somebody trying to rewrite textbooks. They were trying to record slavery and enslavement of a people as immigration. You know what I mean? It's like, people are always trying to whitewash or cover over the truth. And so when that happens, it produces pain. And even though it's the pains, the tears are kind of almost squozing out, because sometimes as Black women, we can't show that vulnerability. I'm gonna give you an example. Did you see some of the clips from when the talk show called The Talk, when Sharon Osbourne kind of went off on her co-anchor on The Talk?
No,
and it was really horrible. What happened was, and in synopsis, I might not catch all of it, they were talking about the interview that Meghan Markle had done with Oprah. And there was I guess a British journalist, Piers somebody, who said, "Oh, I don't believe her, it's lies." And so Sharon Osbourne is friends with this guy. So her co-host was asking a question, and she said, "Well, sometimes, people, you standing with your friend may give the appearance that you're racist too." And then Sharon Osbourne, who I think is maybe British in origin or whatever, but Caucasian, she literally went off on the woman. I mean, to the point to where she was cussing. They kind of cut you caught part of the cuss word before they went to break. And then when they came back from break, she looks over here, and I guess the Black woman her eyes must have welled up, or what she was, and then she kind of negated her feelings, like, you shouldn't be crying. If anybody should be crying, I should be crying. And I'm thinking, like, wow, as a Black woman, I'm gonna tell you, a lot of emotion hit. It's like two things. One, even though she showed great restraint and professionalism, the Black woman who this came at, that was hard. Because one, there was the tears were probably a combination of hurt, because she was wondering, like, this was supposed to be my friend. We worked together for 11 years, and she's gone off on me on this crazy tangent. And then two, you got to sit there and take that. And then three, society isn't as forgiving if a Black woman even stands up for herself. She's labeled the angry Black woman. You know what I mean? So I love this piece because it allows us to really talk about some of the pressures that you might see put upon Black women. The tears aren't always from hurt. Sometimes the tears are, I really want to beat the crap out of you, but I can't do that.
Yeah, right. Righteous rage or righteous anger. Yeah, absolutely. And I see the character at the top, her eyes to me look tired too.
Yes.
Like there's like exhaustion on all the levels.
Yes, it is. It's exhausting. I had a lot of people ask me during, especially when COVID first hit and everybody's totally locked down and all the racial tension. It wasn't just George Floyd, it was Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. And people were like, "Well, how are you feeling? Let's do some workshops about, racial reconciliation." And I had to say, stop. Let me process this. Let me heal. I am exhausted. You know what I mean? And I think I can show this as an artist because a lot of Black women were exhausted. It's almost like the higher status you attain in the community, whether you're in corporate America or whatever, it's almost like the pressures get even harder. Like give you an example. I got some family members who, if they feel something, they'll cuss you out in a minute and it's over. But as you move in different audiences and venues, the pressure to kind of balance it, keep your composure, hold it together gets harder, and it just gets more mentally taxing on you. And you're right. You are just, you're like, I'm just tired. Yeah.
What do you think happens for Black women when they see this piece? What do you think is the potential there? in like in seeing the story illustrated in this way?
I think it is one, you feel a sense of relief that, okay, hey, yeah, there's a sister who really gets what I'm feeling. And then you also sense that, okay, hey, here's an outlet, and here's an avenue that gives me a little bit more freedom to really talk about how I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, many Black women are feeling this way, and we're wondering, like, who can I talk to? Or you're like, or if you face with, sometimes I was sharing with some other sisters, sometimes when you have to kind of educate people to unconscious biases and stuff like that, that gets tiring too. And you're like, here we go again. Mm-hmm. Or you're listening to somebody wants to throw something out negative at a Black person, and then all of a sudden the catch-all phrase is, oh, I apologize. You know what I mean? Like, give an example when the Central Park incident where the guy was bird watching, and the lady just basically got on the phone, called the police, and then she went into this extra over dramatic role of making it seem like she was in danger. And I was so glad that the guy wasn't there when the police showed up, because we could have almost written what the outcome of that story would have been. And to think that, okay, I can do this to someone, and I think the solution of it is to say, oh, I apologize. Like, they become merely words. And so sometimes we're tired of the words. Let it be a true transformation of character. And that only comes through beginning to build relationship with each other. It's never going to be solved if I always view it as us and them instead of we. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I really love this piece. I think communicates the we. It communicates this process of transformation that's necessary for there to even be a we, to like take that tape or whatever it is off of your mouth and speak truth.
Yeah.
Not so deafening. And for the recognition, all the layers of recognition involved in this piece, I think you've just so beautifully illustrated what we need to, like, before we can even get to racial reconciliation, right? Like racial reconciliation, yes, absolutely. Let's like keep moving towards that. And like first, there's this deep well of unacknowledged grief that exists in the culture.
And then the other piece too is, just acknowledging that no matter how smart I am or how intelligent I am, that there are some things I just don't know. What I really love through this process, I've had a lot of white sisters and brothers who have said, let me step back and you tell me how I can best help you. Versus what we used to always get in the past is, oh, this is what I think should happen for our diversity initiative and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, have you stopped to see what I really need? And that's one of the things I love about this whole grant process too. There was no one saying, this is our program. You take what you're doing, you fit into our mold. They said, what is it that you want to do? And so at that point I said, I want to create art that can spark the kind of conversations that I really believe need to happen. But people still have to come to those conversations with an open mind.
Absolutely. Which is the essence of truth and reconciliation.
Yes.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm so glad that they designed it in such a way, like to have the emotional and social intelligence to design a grant making process that, like, if you're going to do a truth and reconciliation grant, for that to come through from the design all the way through the process of like sharing out to the community.
That's true too. And this was actually the first time, if I don't know if you know about ArtsWave. ArtsWave typically only grants to arts organizations. This is the very first time that ArtsWave has actually granted to individual artists. Oh, wow. And I think we need to see a lot more of that platform for individual artists who,
Absolutely.
you know, can create those art pieces, whether it's dance, whether it's poetry, whether it's visual art. You know, for me, blending the mediums, I'm just a multi medium artist by natural. You know, I because I'm a writer and because I sing and I love to do it all. The art is a springboard to create writing, to create conversation. But when it's all said and done, I don't want it to just be, oh, here's these pretty pictures on the wall. I want it to help to promote some change.
Yes. What do you, from your perspective, from your wisdom, what roles do you think artists play in the process of transformation?
I think artists are the ones who help to enlighten, and because we're able to, we're able to say, hey, we got a racial problem here without making it seem so divisive before the person even gets into trying to solve the problem. And that's what I mean by non-threatening. I could have done this in a style of realism, but then it might have pulled people back because if you saw clearly a Caucasian individual with Caucasian features and a Black individual with clearly Black features, your thought would be, oh, here we go with this again, versus here's a big giant Black X. You see this bold red orange and this bold yellow, and it makes you wonder, like, okay, what's this all about? Mm-hmm. So it kind of invites you in to something deeper. So it uses something bright and inviting to invite you in for that deep dive.
Yes, I love that. And we touched on that a bit at the beginning. I like that through line is coming back into the conversation around visual arts as a bridge to deeper conversation, into difficult conversation as well.
It is.
Okay. And so we also have this gorgeous piece. Tell us what's the title of this piece, and then let's just dive into talking about.
Oh yeah, this one is called The Bloodline. Mm-hmm. So, many of the pieces are very reflective of this Black woman in front of you. So many of the pieces are reflective of Annie Ruth. I love mixed media. So her hair on the left side is actually made with dried yellow rose petals.
Ooh.
And if you look to the right, those are actually small miniature wooden shingles. So her hair is made out of stained wooden shingles. And if you look at her face to the right, there's actually a cross there. Can you see the cross there?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So that's a tribute to my faith, and then there's also a tribute to my African heritage. So when I talk about the bloodline, I'm talking about my African bloodline, and then my blood of Christ bloodline. So when you see this Black woman in front of you, you're getting a equal perspective of my faith in God and my faith and tribute to my African ancestors. So the different variations of the red, the woman herself becomes, if you step back and look at the canvas, it's kind of layered. The woman herself, even though there's a cross in between her face, the woman herself becomes a cross as well. She actually becomes on the cross. If without seeing her whole body, if you can imagine, the cross behind her kind of gives you the impression that she's nailed to the cross herself. So I'm curious to know what you saw when you saw this one.
I love that description. It's so potent. I see texture. Like one of the things that really just jumps out to me from the beginning is like all of the layers involved in this piece, which says something to me also about ancestry and this bloodline concept.
Yes.
I'm really struck by what you just said about the juxtaposition of the cross and this like putting her on the cross and like taking a look at how has our society created an archetype in which the Black woman is crucified on behalf of the wellness of the whole society.
Yeah.
That's a really potent statement to make, and I think a really important conversation to have.
And I'm loving it because the great thing about my art is that a preschooler could enjoy the piece and get out of it, and someone who is well versed in art, if they look beyond the surface, can get something out of it too. And so that's one of the reasons I kind of sway away from necessarily doing paintings that are just, you know, hyper realism or whatever. And I have nothing against those particular artistic styles. This style of incorporating mixed media and layering the materials helps me to, I think, dive easier into the themes for me. So
that makes sense. That makes
I always make, you notice something different too about my work. I love the broad noses and the broad lips. I have lots of relatives in Atlanta, in Georgia. And one thing I've always loved about my cousins, I call them just those beautiful Georgia lips, that their lips were always nice and wide and broad. And I just saw such beauty in that. So that's why you'll see that.
I love how your work is distinguished too, because you take this mixed media approach. I feel like if I'm out and about and I see a piece of work, I can tell that it's an Annie Ruth because of the features that you highlight and because of the layers and the texture that you bring to the table. Were there specific reasons that you picked rose and wood for the hair?
The yellow rose was actually, they were roses sent to me as a token of forgiveness. And so I let, once I kind of had them in the water and they went through their process, I let them take the natural drying out process and just kind of wanted to play off of the symbolism of that yellow rose. The wood, I was just kind of thinking of covering or roof. And I just knew I wanted to do something that, particularly with her hair, that kind of made a statement. Because I was talking to my son the other day and he said, Mom, I can tell when a Black woman cuts her hair or does anything to her hair, there always seems to be a spiritual connotation attached to it, particularly if she cuts her hair. Because if you notice, when we saw each other in January, my hair wasn't cut either.
Right.
But so that's why I kind of wanted to make sure her hair made a statement itself too, because, you know, and part of our bloodline in African culture, the hair was the woman's crown and glory. They would often, depending on what tribes you come from, you could sometimes see colored mud where they shape sculptures and stuff into the hair. So I wanted the hair to kind of have that effect too.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love the highlights of yellow that come throughout this piece too. The like that sense of warmth and light and growth. And it reminds me just of like a hopeful future. And I think that's something I always feel when I'm around you, and the way that you present yourself in the world and as a community-based artist is this like very much honoring and integrating the past, being present with the future. And you have this like special knack for cultivating hope about the future. And I think it's pretty amazing like how that shows up in these pieces, which communicate struggle and communicate suffering and communicate above all beauty and resilience and presence and hope. That's amazing.
I learned so much because my sister is our family genealogist. She's the one who does all the DNA. And so when I was tested, like I said, several years, we've lived our life in the United States, not knowing, not even being able to go past maybe a couple of generations in our ancestry. And so when Ancestry, with their DNA program, began to be able to trace, it was so phenomenal for a lot of us, because my sister actually had us tested, and we tested our bloodlines, and I was actually able to get my results that probably not my bloodlines, despite enslavement of African people, my bloodline is still 99% African. And I was like, wow. And so we're able to even trace the whys of that too, because a lot of my ancestors were in the South Carolina, Georgia area, near the rice farms. Many who would maybe be classified as Gullah Geechee.
Yeah,
so
ask about that.
there wasn't a lot of intermingling. Now, the miseducation part, when I was younger, if someone called you a Geechee, you're ready to fight, because you didn't know what that was. It just sounded like something derogatory. But I'm thankful to my sister for being able to trace that. Now, does that make me any better or worse than anyone? No, but for me, it's important because of the miseducation that we've had. Because, you know, I wrote a poem years ago called A Black Woman, Nothing Else, when I was a teenager. And it talked about how, you know, I was teased and taunted about the darkness of my skin, and how I had to really learn to really love and appreciate myself. And so that's why, if there's a theme of Africa and self-pride and self-love, those themes I think are going to always be prevalent in my work, just because there's so much to dispel, so much damage to be undone, that you can never say it enough.
And I hear it come through in your story. You talk a lot about how your work is biographical. Like, this is Annie Ruth. So that's part of your process and story. And it's like part of why it's so important for you to share that liberation that you found in learning that about yourself.
I think people get a better idea. Like you had a chance to get to know me. So I think a lot of what I'm explaining, after a while, you kind of like know, you know, what things mean. So that helps.
Because there's like a repetition. I think you have a pattern language. Maybe I've heard people use that term before, pattern language. It's like, once you have developed mastery, which you absolutely have, then you have this opportunity to create your own visual language. And so if you create your world, there totally is this Annie Ruth world that you invite people into. And it's, what I love about it is it's hospitable and warm, and also oriented toward truth. And so there's this like you always come from this grounded place of knowing who you are and educating from that.
Yeah. And this has been great, hasn't it? Talking together. And so, like I said, there's going to be a total of, well, the original plan was like 12 mural-sized paintings. It's so funny, and you can appreciate this as an artist. When I say mural size, sometimes people say mural. I was like, no. What mural size just means, it's a fancy way of saying I'm creating 12 large paintings.
Yes. Yeah, nice. That's a lot. Wow. So tell us, like, where are you at in the process of creating those 12 paintings?
I've got about 7 completed. I actually did one there's one called Tree by the River. And of course it plays off that me being that tree, and you know what the river is symbolizing. But I've got about 7 done. I'm still actively working, doing a piece called We Wear the Mask as well, where it's gonna really dive into the different masks that we have to wear. You know, people say, remember growing up, I don't know if you've heard this song before. Used to be the song called "Who's Behind the False Face? Nobody knows but me."
Oh, right? No, I heard that.
Okay, maybe I'm telling my age on that one. That's one we used to sing when I was a little girl. So the false face is that mask, and so sometimes when we enter like I said, many folks that are entering places where they're the only Black person or the only, you just got to learn to talk a different language. I think we're probably the most multilingual people that exist, because even in my house, there's a certain set of culture that's established that, like, if I go downtown over the Rhine, I'm still Annie, but I think a little bit less formal Annie has to come, through. Or there was a time where I was an advocate for abused and neglected children in juvenile court. And of course, when you go into the courtroom, there's a whole nother, persona that has to.
We've got all these roles that we have to play. So we like dial up or dial down the different aspects of ourselves.
Yeah.
Learning how to do that with fluency and not lose our center. Like,
right.
Say who you are, but also
that's
be
true.
A little bit different in each setting. That's good work. That's hard.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that I've actually, the poem I told you about, I did a piece based on my poem called A Black Woman, Nothing Else, where I actually wrote the poem out, and then I did a portrait, a self-portrait of myself with different layers. There's going to be one more, so there'll be 2 portraits of me where you actually see my physical likeness on the canvas in this particular. One is going to be called Introspection, where I'm really looking at bringing out elements of who I am within my face. And then I'm looking at trying to merge my mother in there too. So when I look in the mirror, I see my mom, elements of what my mom kind of put into me as well. So trying my best to honor her spirit and bring out myself too.
Yeah. Where will these be on display? How can the community see them?
Well, the first thing that's going to happen, and I kind of wrestled with it, more than likely because the institutions are just now opening back up and they don't really have sound dates. So it's anticipated for the summer of 2021. More than likely they'll be at the Cincinnati Museum Center. I had talked about maybe, sharing them at the Freedom Center, but because there's so many visual artists in the Truth and Reconciliation Project, as the elder, I'm kind of sliding back and letting the other artists take Freedom Center. And I'm going to the Cincinnati Museum Center, which is like home for me. I've always done a lot of collaboration and work. And then they have more of a broader audience. So there's a lot more younger people that can come through and see the pieces. So people will see more than likely a virtual exhibition of the entire collection. But as you know, there's nothing like seeing it in person, because some of the nuances the photograph of it can't capture.
Oh, all the texture and the feeling. Absolutely. The first time that I ever met you and your art was at the museum center. It was like maybe 9+ years ago. You had it up in the gallery space that's next to the IMAX.
Yes, right.
Opening. And I remember like, whoa, this is amazing. And you also had, that's when I learned you were an educator too. So you had like your educator packets with you. And I was like, well, this is an amazingly well-rounded human being.
This right here, honestly, I really know that on her shoulders has got to have an educator packet, because
that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's really where this comes into play as well. So we'll make this conversation. This is available and open to the public. It will be to view and to engage with and interact with. And I think the workshop and the education potential is really strong.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that too.